For Louisiana versus all y'all, Jarrett Roser here with Brett McCormick, a guy who, whether you realize it yet or not seeing him, has been on the Louisiana versus all y'all channel quite a bit. You might recognize the voice from doing some interviews of some guys all over the 318 during football season, as well as some of those basketball state champions. And one thing we wanted to do as we kind of prepare for this next upcoming school year is Brett, in addition to all of his media background, has been refereeing some games in multiple sports for several years now. And so we wanted to take some opportunities to look at some key plays at each level relevant to Louisiana athletics. And as much as we were kind of in some early planning stages, there was an officiating call over the weekend that really caught a lot of Louisiana's attention. And so obviously that LSU play at the plate we'll look at a little bit. But Brett, appreciate you always, and certainly some more of your time today. How's everything going, and just kind of thoughts on this plan we're putting together to look at some officiating things moving forward?
Yeah, man, I'm excited about it. We kind of bounced this idea around, and it's like, yeah, man, let's do it. I think there'll be interest in it, and I'm not going to come at this as like I am the officiating expert or anything like that, but I've been reffing basketball for 15 years now and did about 10 years of baseball. And so it's something that I follow closely, love to talk about. You and I, we send some texts back and forth talking about certain things. And, it's just a passion of mine. I enjoy doing it.
And I mean, you mentioned you're not coming at this as, the end all be all voice. We're going to hear a lot in this play's review of judgment call and kind of the factor that goes with that. And so, sometimes there's gray areas that you guys have to deal with on the fly. And I think that's sort of an interesting piece of some of these conversations that we'll end up having moving forward. But Saturday, I text you, hey, I was not by a television, but I'm trying to listen on the radio, and it was confusing as could be to try to listen to Chris Blair and company deal with their confusion watching it through. I had some choppy reception. And so you kind of jump into the middle of this chaotic situation as you're watching some of it unfold initially, obviously a critical point in the game, top of the 10th inning. What are you seeing and kind of looking for as you're trying to make sense of it on the fly?
Well, it's funny, I'm watching the softball regional when you text me, and then I pop over and, it's confusion. There's confusion everywhere from the announcers. The umpires are getting together. It's confusion in the dugout. I mean, Coach Johnson's already been tossed, and there's just a lot going on. And as they go through it and they show the replay, and, I text you, I'm like, and I don't say this very often, but I'm like, I think LSU's getting the short end of the stick here. Personally, and we'll go through why I believe that. But it was definitely like a high level of confusion, a lot of time to get together and get this thing what they thought was right. And I've read a lot of people who said it's right, and I think the way they implemented the rule is correct. And we'll talk about the judgment a little bit later.
Yeah, so I guess let's take a look at the play. It was one that LSU thought they were getting out of the top of the 10th inning in a tie ball game, and instead, the umpires, the officials look at it a little bit more and end up ruling this balk and interference that puts a go-ahead run on the board. And so this is what we're watching on Saturday.
On an attempted squeeze play or steal of home plate, the catcher steps on or in front of home plate without.
So he says on or in front. That's it. That's important to note as we're going to look here at this play.
Interference. It is not. It's not a release. It's not a release. It's before he catches it. So now you got to see exactly where the foot is.
You see all kinds of confusion from Jay Johnson to the fans in the stands going through it a little bit.
And look, I think it's Kyle Peterson, the ESPN announcer. I think he does a great job of kind of breaking this down for the fans in real time, which is not easy to do. You and I, we've had time to go back and look at this thing over and over again, and Kyle's doing this in real time, and I thought he did a pretty good job as we get to the replay here of the pitch. And we'll talk about the pitch versus a step off and how that changes things, but here we go. So it's a pitch. And so you see,
so like right here, you're telling me he has to stay back.
Right there, when he catches it, is his foot on the plate. Clearly, he's not on the plate. So then you go, is he in front of the plate? And I think you can look at it as right. To me, the right foot looks like it's off to the side of the plate, not in front of the plate. And there's another good shot as we move forward from behind you. You can kind of see the same thing. And you know, I've listened to several people talk about this, and they say, you know, he can go in the other batter's box. He can, like in a pitch out, he can vacate the catcher's box. He just can't step on or in front of the plate. And I don't think right here he's not. He's not on or in front of the plate. And so I think from a judgment standpoint, I personally don't believe they got this right. From a knowing the rule, and look, the difference between the guys that do rec ball and the guys who do high school ball and the guys who do SEC is they know this rule exists. Not sure how many people had ever heard of the balk catcher's interference rule. In fact, they know that it existed. They could get together and apply the rule correctly is a big deal. And I think they applied the rule correctly, but I don't think the judgment is correct. And what I say about that, and they tell us this all the time, especially in basketball, is in a pivotal moment like this, when you're top of the 10th, go ahead, run, make sure that you get the big things, we call them the elephants, and you leave the anthills alone. I just think you have to know without a shadow of a doubt that he's on the plate or in front of the plate to make this call in this moment. And that's where I think they erred. Is this is even if it's correctly applied as a rule, it's just so minuscule of whether he's on or in front of the plate. And look, it's much harder in baseball than it is in basketball. You have all kinds of things that can happen on every single play in baseball, and I get that. But I think in this moment, you got to know that you're correct, not think that you're correct. And I think whoever the LSU assistant was that came out and talked to him, and they talked about this on the ESPN broadcast, they asked him, like, do you know that he was in front of the bag? And he said, I think the home plate umpire said yes, but I don't think that was correct in this instance. And obviously we know fast forward, it didn't matter. I texted you, it's moot. Doesn't matter. It's still fun to talk about. But, thankfully for these guys, that didn't end up costing them, the game. It didn't end up costing LSU the game. And they tell us this in basketball, like 32 minutes in a high school game, 40 minutes in a college game, right? The first 36 to 38 minutes of a college game, you can be perfect. But if you kick something in the last 2 minutes of the game, that's what people are going to remember. And if LSU had lost this game, there's no doubt this would have been the pivotal moment of the contest. And you've got to make sure that you get it correct. And look, we all make mistakes. We're human beings. I get athletes telling me all the time, that official's cheating me or blah, 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 blah. I promise you, nobody's cheating. We are human beings. We err in judgment occasionally. We just try to make sure that we get 95 to 96% of them correct. And I thought this crew did a really good job kind of talking this thing through and getting it done correctly. I just wish that they wouldn't have done that, because he's out by 10, 12 feet. There was this balk interference did not affect the play at all. And if he just caught him out, then you move on. But who knows? Who knows what happens if LSU's not down by one? Do they score in the bottom half of the inning? Who knows? There's a lot that can happen.
It looks, and I mean, it needs to be said, looks like a phenomenal job by Brady Neal behind the plate to straddle it and not be on top of it, make the catch there. And you see at the point that he's receiving that throw, it looks like the batter is, the better part of a foot outside the batter's box. And you mentioned the distance between the runner and home plate. As a play like this unfolds and you're kind of trying to talk with your team through, okay, what did we see? obviously you weren't in that specific conversation, but what does that conversation look like to try and check with everybody and come together as an official crew, whether it be baseball or otherwise, as y'all kind of talk out something that is a tense situation, a bang bang type situation, and you're trying to sort through it all?
Well, usually it's going to run through the crew chief, and not always is the crew chief the home plate umpire, but the crew chief needs to ask questions like, you know, what did you see? What did you have? Tell me what you saw so we can make sure that we apply the rule correctly. And I think they did that. They even checked with replay to make sure that the rule was being applied correctly so they could avoid a protest from LSU, because you can protest whether a rule is applied correctly. You can't protest judgment. You can't protest, his judgment was that he was on or in front of the plate. You can't protest that, but you can protest whether the rule was applied correctly. So that led to a lot of the delay. And so you're just making sure in this moment, in the top of the 10th inning, in the conference tournament semifinals, that we don't kick this rule, that we apply the rule correctly. And I thought, look, the higher you go, the more you benefit from replay and being able to talk to people. And, it's easier to come together and make those decisions on the fly. But this is something that doesn't happen often, right? I think it happened twice in the conference tournament where somebody tried to steal home, and one person was safe and one person was out. It doesn't happen all that often. And they picked up on it pretty quickly. And plus, to know from the get-go that there's a difference between him throwing a pitch versus stepping off. If he had stepped off and thrown home, then none of this matters. He could step on the plate. He could step in front of the plate. So being able to pick all of that up in a matter of, seconds is not easy. This is not an easy play to officiate.
And the whole dynamic of whether a play is reviewable or not, I mean, anybody that watches a lot of college or professional sports, it's obviously a recurring theme. And so something that I think the more we get a chance to look at college, and whether it be NFL with the Saints or NBA with the Pels, or just a big play maybe in the upcoming NBA finals, it's probably a topic we'll get a chance to hit on quite a bit. It was definitely a main point that kept coming up with Paul Guillet, the supervisor of umpires for the SEC, as he addressed the media after the game. Do you think that we need to jump into the sound from Guillet, or you think we pretty much covered the?
I don't really think so. The only thing I wanted to say was that he talked about was, he said, this was not one of the 14 plays that we are allowed to review. Right. And that's where, from an officiating standpoint, that's what we look at. Like when I have college basketball games, what plays are reviewable? And so we kind of have a checklist of, these are the plays we can review. If it doesn't fall under this purview, then we cannot review it. And that was interesting to me from that standpoint. Was they had 14 plays that they knew they could review, and this was not one of the 14 that they could review. So that was, educational for me to learn that from a college baseball standpoint. And I thought that he did a great job of explaining things, again, going through step by step how they made this decision. And I thought everything that they did from rule application was correct. Just started on the judgment end. And I do want to say one other thing, and you mentioned it about Brady Neal, and I think I texted you this. Yes, he played this about as perfectly as could be possible, in my opinion. The way he stepped up to the side, not in front, not on, catch the ball, place the tag, I thought that was textbook, the way that he played it. And I kind of hate that he got kind of maligned a little bit, that he broke a rule when I don't believe that he did.
As you mentioned before, too, the good part of all of this is that you end up with from LSU perspective, the quote unquote ball don't lie finish anyway, where Stephen Milam at the bottom half of the inning helps walk this thing off and push LSU on. As an official, when you have a late play that's controversial, and what your confidence level in it may matter or may not, but you just know it's a play that is under a microscope. Is there a sense of relief after the fact of the players essentially finishing the game in a way that does make a situation like that a controversial call, kind of a moot situation?
Sure. Yeah. Like, I mean, even if I feel I'm never 100% on any call, but even if I feel 99% like I got this correct, the players won the game. It's not on me. And even if I'm a talking point afterwards, I'm not the talking point, right? Stephen Milam's home run is the talking point. So, yes, there's a little sense of relief. Uh, officials, I don't believe, ever care who actually wins. We just don't want to be the determining factor of who actually wins the game. So, yeah, there was probably a little bit of relief there after that home run.
So LSU obviously beats South Carolina in that game, loses to Tennessee the next day in the conference title game. Both those Tennessee and LSU obviously both advanced to the NCAA tournament, as do your alma mater, the Bulldogs up there, Louisiana Tech, and a total of 6 Louisiana teams. But Brett, any other thoughts on that play? Or do you think we pretty much kind of covered?
I think we covered it. And look, I think it was a great one to kind of start this thing off. It was definitely. I'm glad you brought it to my attention. It was educational for me, and just kind of. I think it's interesting for fans who look. We love to gripe about officiating, right? But when we can learn something through the process, I think it's pretty cool. So.
Yeah. And I do not ever envy you guys as much as people complain in person or on Twitter or in group texts or whatever. The expectation on y'all for perfection, and then even if you are pretty close to perfect, you're going to catch hell anyway. It's a pretty thankless situation to be in, and so
Well, I tell everybody this, and I told some friends this. I honestly believe officiating is better today than it's ever been. The problem is, as you saw from the video, we've got forward angles and backwards angles, and we can dissect this thing from so many different ways that never existed before. And then you throw on top of that the instant scrutiny of social media and all that stuff. It's so much easier to see things than it used to be in the past. But I truly believe officiating across the board is still at a very, very high level, even if we have mistakes every now and then.
There you go. He's Brett McCormick. We're going to do this a little bit more frequently, particularly once we get back into the 2024-2025 sports year in the next couple of months. But I think we might have a couple opportunities here and there over the summer to kind of ramp up. Brett, again, appreciate you for your time and everything that you do in the state, in the region, and particularly helping out on Louisiana versus all y'all. It's been awesome.
Love being a part of it, man. I appreciate it.
Good deal. He's Brett McCormick. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana versus all y'all. Thank you all for watching.